What's poppin', JHM? It's Steven from our Bellflower campus. I'm so stoked to be with y'all today. But today, I want to start by sharing a story with you. I'm going to let you into my life, okay? And the story involves two very important people. Me, obviously, and my best friend, Justin. Best friend growing up. We're still best friends to this day. But we were both your age or pretty close. I think probably like 6th grade or so. And here's what happened. Right? So I'm gonna kind of date myself. I'm gonna sound old right now, but when 6th grade came, me and my brother, we were going to a new school, and so we had to bike to school since our school bus wasn't gonna come and pick us up, or I don't even know why. But it was like a half mile. Our house is a half mile from the school, and I was so excited because we were gonna get like this little bit of freedom. And with that, my mom, who sometimes was a little overprotective, she always wanted to make sure we were okay, right? She decided that me and my brother were both gonna get phones because she wanted to make sure that we could call her if we ever needed anything. Okay, so I was stoked. This is my first phone ever. And before you go picturing like the new iPhone 13 that you probably want for Christmas, our first phones looked like this, okay? And on top of this, my parents said that we only got like 50 texts a month that we could send to each other. But as a 6th grader, okay, like I was on top of the world. I felt so cool. I was so excited. That is until Justin's birthday came, though. And you see, Justin's parents, they got him the new Samsung LG Chocolate Touch. Okay? I'm gonna put it, yeah, you can see it on the screen. Pretty high class, okay, top notch at the time. It was touchscreen, and I was jealous, right? And I couldn't fight this feeling inside of me that, like, I was no longer content with just my phone, but I was jealous of Justin's phone. Like, why didn't I get such a cool phone, right? And let's jump forward to today in your life, because I would argue that this struggle of being content with whatever you have, it's probably even harder for you today. Because not only do you compete with what you see at your friends at school and what they have, but you can hop on TikTok, Insta, YouTube, and in a matter of seconds, right, see someone whose life seems way better than yours, right? And so I don't know if you thought about this, but most of the things that you actually see on social media or on YouTube, they're not real life. Like seriously, like hear me out. Like it's more of a highlight reel. It's edited. It's somebody's one good photo from an entire day, or it's one video that represents the best part of that person's life. But even though social media only shows the best of the best, it still has this way of making us wish that we had what other people have, right? And a simple scroll can be a constant reminder of what we don't have. And so maybe for you, it's like a material possession. It's a brand new pair of shoes or the latest iPhone, or you see that somebody else has it and it makes you crazy because you want it too. Or maybe it's a relationship, right? One with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, maybe even a relationship with a parent or a sibling that you wish you had. Maybe it's money. You see other people buying expensive clothes or going on these crazy, nice YouTube trips or something like that, and you wish that you and your family had the same. But no matter what it is, you feel like you're missing. My point is this. It's not hard to notice all of the things that we don't have. But the problem doesn't just stop there, right? Because if you're anything like me, once I notice something that I don't have, I sometimes start to obsess over it. And I start to think about them over and over until this thing kind of shifts in my head, right? And all of a sudden, I stop just thinking about how badly I want it, and I start to think that I deserve it instead. And maybe the same is true for you. And there's this word that some people use to describe what it means to live like we deserve things or something that is owed to us. And that word's simply just entitlement, right? And entitlement is that shift that happens between want and deserve. It teaches our brains to think things like,
it's not fair. I should get to go on an awesome vacation like that too.
Or,
He doesn't even work nearly as hard as I. Like, I should have gotten to had that spot on that team.
Or even like,
I do stuff around the house and deserve a bigger allowance from my parents.
you see what I mean? There's a big difference between simply wanting things that we don't have and then actually believing that those things are owed to us. And when we make that shift in our mind, whether we realize it or not, we start becoming entitled, if we're being honest. And that's a pretty big problem. And if you want to know why, well, because when we start believing we're entitled to things that we don't have, it makes it a lot more difficult for us to see the things that we do have. It keeps us so focused on what we always think that we're owed, that we almost forget all of the things that we already have received. And let me tell you one thing very clearly, it's a miserable way to live life, if you ask me. But the question then is what do you do about that? Stephen, how do I stop? Social media is everywhere, I get that, trust me. But if we don't wanna live this way, focused on what we don't have and feeling entitled, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna change the way that we think? And just like we said last week, the Bible has a lot to say about, honestly, a lot of things in life. But money and wealth is something that we could look at today. And you can bet that the Bible has a lot to say about entitlement too. And there's so many people back then who were focused on what they didn't have and lived as though they deserved more than they got. See, the verse that we're gonna look at today, it's from this letter that was written to Jewish people who had converted to Christianity in a book of the Bible called Hebrews, and they were struggling a little bit. And if you don't know what any of that means, that's okay, I'm gonna explain it. But these Jews, right, they were taught to believe that they were special from birth because of the fact that they were God's chosen people. And not only that, right, but God chose to use the Jewish people to bless the entire world through one extraordinary Jewish baby that we all know. Here's a guess. His name is Jesus. Okay. So talk about special, right? They felt so special in this. But in Jesus' life, and when he died and when he rose again, right? When he came back to life, he changed everything for all people. It threw out the old rules and made room for a whole new way of living, right? And when Jesus died, he didn't just die for the Jewish people, but he died for everyone. And so as you can probably imagine, a lot of the Jewish people, they had a hard time letting go of some of these old beliefs that they were taught. And they weren't adjusting well to this new way of life, of not being as special. And so the writer of Hebrews, he sat down to write a letter that was supposed to encourage them towards a new way of life, the one that Jesus modeled for them and that he shows us. And at the very end of this letter, we find this warning about money, wealth, and entitlement. And it starts like this. Don't be obsessed with getting more material things. Be relaxed with what you have. Hebrews 13:5. So basically get this, right? The writer of this passage is saying, stop worrying about the things you don't have. Stop focusing on what you think you deserve. Instead, rest easy and be happy with what you do have. And why do you think the author of Hebrews, he brought this up? I ask that sometimes. Why did he include it in the letter? But I think it's because the author knew what we know, that entitlement has this ugly little feeling and it has this way of sneaking up on us, right? And Jesus came to bring us a new and a better way of living. And the writer of Hebrews, he didn't want the Jewish people to miss out on that freedom by focusing on what they wished they had or even what they thought they deserved. And I don't want you to miss out on that either, okay? Because entitlement, it causes us to miss what we do have by keeping our eyes focused on everything that we don't have. It was true back then for the Hebrew people, and it's true for us today. So maybe at this point, you might be thinking, that's great and all, Stephen, but what do we do about it? How do I stop this feeling of entitlement from creeping in? And that's a great question. And I think that's where the next part of this verse actually comes in and is really cool to read. Because the writer didn't just tell us that we shouldn't live with entitlement, but he told us how to do it. And it says, since God assured us, I'll never let you down, never walk off, and never leave you. Hebrews 13:5. So how do we fight the feeling of entitlement? By remembering that God has promised that he'll never let us down. He'll never leave us without the things that we need. In fact, he'll never leave us at all. So rather than looking through all of life through a lens that tells us we're missing out on blank, blank, and blank, or that we're owed this, and that, we can instead choose to trust that we'll always have all of what we need because God's never gonna let us down. And so here's a truth that I want you to remember when you find yourself slipping towards entitlement, when you're scrolling on Insta, or when you're on TikTok, or on YouTube, or you see a friend at school. You have something to be grateful for. You have the promise that God is never gonna leave you, never gonna let you down, and that's a pretty big deal. And it's definitely something for us to be grateful for. So what do we do with all of this? How do we keep our eyes off the things we want and instead focus on what we're grateful for? For some of you, it might simply begin by recognizing entitlement in your life. And I know that's weird to say. I'm not calling you out, okay? I'm with you in it. I'm with you in the struggle. but it means catching the thoughts that cross our minds sometimes, telling us that we deserve what someone else has. It means recognizing sometimes when we feel like we're owed something in this life. When you catch yourself feeling envious of something that someone else has or wishing for something to happen in your life, what if we stopped and asked ourselves this question? Do I just want this, or do I think I deserve it? And that question, it helps me recognize entitlement as it's happening in your life. Because get this, it's not wrong to want something. But we cross that line when we start to think, right, that it's deserved to us. Because after all, you can't change a way of thinking if we don't know that it's there, if we don't recognize it. And then once we recognize it, I think that we can make a choice to be grateful. So in other words, we can choose contentment. You see, contentment is the opposite of entitlement. And remember last week we talked about recognizing that we all have something that matters. Well, contentment takes this one idea a step further and encourages us to be grateful for it. Contentment asks us how to be happy in the here and the now, to be grateful for the things that we have just as they are. And contentment, that's always gonna help us avoid entitlement. You see, sometimes we can find contentment in the least expected places too. And sometimes when we help other people and we look at other people's lives, we can realize how grateful we are for the things that we take for granted every single day. So here's my challenge. I want each of you guys to try this. I'm gonna do it with you guys. But at the end of each day this week, what if we made a list of just 5 things that we're grateful for? It could be notes in your phone, it could be on a little sticky note, whatever you wanna do. But this could literally be anything. Your family, your team, your phone, your small group, a good food that you ate. It could be things like clean water, a chocolate donut, maybe a drive-through restaurant that you ate at. Whatever it is, you just write down 5 things each evening before you go to bed, and you reflect on the fact that God gave you that to be grateful for it today. And then we pay attention to the way that gratitude can change our focus. So instead of going to bed thinking about 5 things that we didn't have that day, we could choose to be grateful, choose contentment with the things that we do have. And I think that you guys will be surprised at how easy it is to fight off this entitlement if we choose to start looking at gratitude and contentment instead. Because after all, we all have something to be grateful for. So as you head into small group today, I want you to think about this question. What's one thing that you have to be grateful for today?